Hi there, my name is Leo, this is the Leo Gourmet, and tonight I'm going to teach you how to make a delicious pork roast. This video was inspired by my friend Alex, creator of the Alex Kitchen series that teaches people to put down the takeout menu and pick up a frying pan, and somewhere between 5 and 27 beers. Seriously, Alex, I think you might have a problem. Anyway, I have one disclaimer before we get started. This is a crock pot recipe, but there are a few steps that you have to do after it's done cooking. So this isn't one of those recipes where you put it together in the morning and then take it out and then immediately throw it on the table. It's nothing too arduous, it's nothing too taxing or too time consuming, but you're going to want to prepare that when you're trying to figure out how much time to budget for this. So, with that in mind, let's go get our ingredients. I should probably close. If you want to make a pork shoulder, the first thing you need to get is some pork. In this case, you need to get about 8 pounds of pork shoulder. I got this one for 99 cents a pound on sale, but it's usually a pretty cheap cut anyway. It's also a pretty tough cut, which is good because we're going to be putting it in a crock pot for 8 to 12 hours, and if it's some softer cut, like a pork loin, it might turn into mush. We do not want mush. You are also going to want to add an onion and some onion powder. Onion powder has a bad rap, but here we're going for big, punchy, unsubtle flavors. So going with powdered things over the fresh versions, usually the better way to go. That said, I think adding an onion rounds out the flavor pretty nicely. Specifically, you're going to add, see if I can get this right, there we are, about 1 teaspoon of onion powder. After that, you're going to want to add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder and 2 teaspoons of chili powder. I have to turn it sideways because camera. And 2 teaspoons of coarse Mediterranean salt or kosher salt or any big rock salt thing you got. If you don't have any of those, table salt will be fine. It's not a deal breaker. And finally, for our seasonings, we're going to want 4 teaspoons of cumin. Cumin is amazing. The last ingredient we're going to want to put in this thing is some liquid, because we're putting it in the crock pot and we basically need some sort of a boiling conveyance. If you have it, you can use plain old chicken broth. You want 3 cups of chicken broth for a 8-pound roast. But today, we don't have to do that because last time I made one of those, I made stock. This one's unfiltered, obviously. I have to filter it before I use it, but this is going to make this roast extra special. And best of all, when I'm done, I will have a bone in here that probably has some flavor on it, and I can make more stock to replace this one. So let's talk for a moment about hardware. If you're one of those people who always browns your meat before you put it in a crock pot, you're going to need a frying pan. I don't think you really need to do this for this recipe because we're already going to be put it in the broiler after we take it out of the crock pot for a few minutes. So you'll still get that tasty burnt crust that everybody really likes on their meat. You will, however, need a cutting board. I got this one from my friends Tim and Sarah. It's bamboo. They're probably watching this, so thank you for the great cutting board, Tim and Sarah. You will also need, if you're Alex, a platform highbrow barista coffee rye pale ale. You'll need this because if it's a fancy and classy beer, you're not an alcoholic, you're a hobbyist. You will need a crock pot. And if you're going to have a crock pot, you need crock pot liners. I know you don't think you need crock pot liners, but trust me, you need crock pot liners. It cuts down cleanup immensely. Total game changer. This crock pot happens to not actually be big enough for the full 8 pounds of roast that I picked up. That's okay. I was already planning to cut off the shoulder bone so that I can use it to make stock later. There are 2 more items that I particularly need. One, I need a glove because raw meat is gross and I don't want to touch it. And I also need this apron because my girlfriend says it makes me look adorable. She's right. Okay, so here's a part that I have to do in one take. So, knock on bamboo, let's see what happens. When it comes time to chop your onions, don't overdo it. Just sort of cut it into big pieces like this. When we're done cooking it in the crock pot, we're going to be wanting to pull these out so we can add them to our reduction, and little pieces just make it that much harder to do that. This is about the same time you want to take and combine all of your seasonings. It makes this next part a little bit easy. This next part is, of course, the part where we add everything to the crock pot, which has a crock pot liner because game changer. So, we start by adding our onions. Yay, onions. Like I said, this is the part where I have to do it all in one take. Next, we start adding the meat. And this is the part where I have that glove because raw meat is gross. Add a little meat. I've also roughly cut this specifically so that I can kind of put it in there, shape it around on a little bit, but I don't have to worry about getting tiny, gross little pieces later, because all that fatty tissue is going to render down anyway. And I'm adding this as I go, but really you probably don't have to. I mean, you're going to be adding some liquid, and that'll cause it all mixed together, and it'll boil and blend and all that. That said, I like combining it a little bit. Everybody like my little Batman Riddler cut thing? All right. Finally, we add some liquid. Like so. And we add a lid to this whole mess. Funny thing about my lid, old friend of mine's roommate destroyed it and refused to admit it, but that's okay because you can use Sugru, which is awesome stuff, to build a new one that's completely heat resistant. So, a little bit of DIY. And holy crow, I got through that in one take. I feel pretty accomplished. Ladies and gentlemen, the roast is officially in the fridge for the night. All I have to do in the morning is put it on the heat, on low, and go about my day. Trouble is, I tend to be a little bit of a zombie in the morning, and I have forgotten about this stuff in the past. Luckily, I've taken precautions and made a sign to go on the front door. Also signs to go on my keys, my wallet, my cell phone, all three of my favorite coffee mugs, and the bathroom mirror, so I should be okay. For now, I'm gonna get some sleep, hopefully. I'll see you guys in a few hours. Good morning, Leo Gourmet. It appears that by the grace of God and composite risk management, I have managed to not forget about you and not forget about our roast. Let's get that thing turned on, shall we? Bathos. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have pork. At this point, it's perfectly delicious. It's a little soft, it's really good over rice or mixed in with mashed potatoes. We're gonna make it even better by putting it in the oven on the broiler setting, high, for about 15 minutes, flipping it halfway. This will get lots of nice crunchy and crispy bits on it that people absolutely love on pork. I pulled out most of the onions to put over here, along with a few pieces of meat and some of the larger fatty bits, in with all of the juice so that it can reduce by about half, and then we're actually going to add that back. You'll see that a little bit later. To get the juice out of the crock pot and also make it easier to pick out the meat and the onions, all I did was take my liner, you know, that game changer, and cut off one of the corners with some scissors and dump that directly in. Made it a lot easier to pull everything out. So I guess it's time to go ahead and put this in the oven, which means we need to introduce the world's greatest oven mitt, otherwise known as mitten, heat protective. This thing is excellent for putting roasts into ovens. It's also excellent for changing the barrels on 50 caliber machine guns. Let's rock. I honestly don't have a transition plan for this, so let's see what happens. Let's do this thing. Yeah, look at that. Perfectly crunchy, perfectly crispy, lots of nice little soft bits in the middle. Our liquid's looking pretty good too. It's reduced by about half. Still got a little ways to go. I tasted a few seconds ago. Flavors are developing, but still a little thin. And what might surprise you is that the slow cooker is back in action. By the way, I've occasionally been calling this a crock pot by accident. This is a Hamilton Beach slow cooker, not a crock pot. Apologies for the use of the generic trademark. And right now what it's got in it is that shoulder bone that I had with a little bit of the meat and fat that was still stuck on it. And I covered it with just enough water to cover it and threw in a little bit of vinegar. And I've got it on low, and I'm going to keep it there for about 24 hours. You heard right, 24 hours. When it's done, I'll have a nice golden stock type stuff that I can use for other things, such as the basis of a gravy, perhaps, in a few weeks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you make the perfect pork roast. It's crispy, it's tender, it's juicy, it's inexpensive, and oh yeah, it's absolutely delicious. So, unless you're going to help me wash dishes, I think that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you had as much fun watching it as I had making it, but I really don't think that's possible. Once again, I'm Leo. This is the Leo Gourmet. And remember, if the food you make tastes good to you, then you, my friend, have excellent taste. See you next time. I should really figure out if Alton Brown has a trademark on the whole cover thing. So now that we have that bit of self-indulgence out of the way, I'm going to introduce you to an autumn drink perfect for the Alex in your life. It has only 3 ingredients, 4 if you have an orange slice available. First, you need 2 ounces of apple cider. Then you need 2 ounces of cheap champagne or sparkling wine. Add the sparkling wine to the 2 ounces in a glass, then garnish with a little bit of cinnamon and maybe that orange slice if you have one. Voila! I give you the apple cider mimosa. Because remember, when it's a mimosa, it's not day drinking, it's brunch.